Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome to a brand new Fallout 76 video. So Bethesda have just shared a new dev dive into the upcoming Atlantic City update, and it looks like this might just be the story update we have been waiting for. Okay, so yeah, over on Bethesda's YouTube channel and on most of their other socials as well, we now have a new dev dive video taking an early look at the upcoming Atlantic City updates. I say updates because this is going to be a two-part thing, and yeah, early indications seem to be that a lot of what we have been crying out for quite some time now, in terms of story updates as well as other stuff as well, may well be coming as part of these two-part update, and it looks very, very interesting. So, as sort of an overview of how this breaks down as far as we know so far, we know the first update coming in December will include 2 new expeditions set in Atlantic City. Which 2 of the 3 expeditions we don't know, although we do know a little bit about 2 of them, so it's probably these 2. But we'll have to see. And obviously, it looks like from what's on the public test server at the moment, again, I should say, because this is the second round of testing for this feature, it looks like we might be getting a set of new game, new player, new character updates coming that will sort of affect your early game experience on your way out of the vault and your early levels as well. So that's all on the PTS at the moment, ahead of Atlantic City dropping onto the PTS later today. So it looks like this is going to be the first part, whereas the second part would appear to be the remaining 3rd expedition and the explorable part of Atlantic City. So it seems. The explanation of this is not as clear as it could be, but it does look like the second update will be the one that brings the ability to just go to Atlantic City, wander around, explore as you would in Appalachia and get into quests and have those sort of story-based adventures. But it sounds like that's all coming in the second one. At least it would appear to be the case anyway. So, going for a bit of a general overview here, I'm going to throw this in while I remember. They have mentioned camp objects as rewards for various things, expeditions and quests and so on. Not really surprising, obviously there'll be new season as well come December. One thing they haven't said, given that this is a new location, is that whether or not we're going to be able to build there. They did mention in this video taking bits of Atlantic City back to your camp in Appalachia, so that does sound like you won't be building camps here, as an FYI, even if the location is otherwise explorable. But the idea seems to be that they're going to transition fairly smoothly between the two, so, I mean, there'll be a loading screen, because obviously, but other than that, you'll be able to hop between the 2 areas without too much getting in the way and preventing you from doing that, so that should be pretty cool. It'll be interesting to see what their sort of landing zones are like for arriving in this new area and where the vertibird will put down, because I'm sure that's still going to be the way to get there. So, Atlantic City, what do we know generally about the area so far? So we've been told there's going to be sort of new expeditions, there's a casino location and a boardwalk. This we kind of knew before. A bit more information, obviously the location is a tourist centre, both IRL and in the Fallout universe, and so not a military target, so it didn't get hit directly, much like Appalachia in that regard. And because of where it is, and the fact they've managed to avoid direct hits, and some apparently disaster preparedness, they've managed to sort of salvage a society and a functioning sort of life out of the ruins. So, yeah, the rest of the world around them ended, but they've still got power, they've still got a society, they've still got running water, that sort of thing. It's as close to untouched as we're going to get. It's not untouched by any stretch of the imagination, but it's as close as you're going to get. And the impact, obviously, of the war has sort of happened around and encroached from the outside inward to the Atlantic City region, rather than being sort of a direct hit, which is quite interesting. So we've got 3 main factions that are going to be introduced here, so slightly larger than the previous expeditions-related updates, because this is a bit more than just an expeditions update. So the first faction is the municipal government. We don't know a great deal about these guys at the moment, other than they seem to be involved in keeping the lights on and keeping the water flowing. That seems to be their main area of interest. They're presumably trying to be the group in charge. However, there are 2 other factions who are also vying for and succeeding in gaining a certain amount of control and influence within Atlantic City, because they control certain other areas of life that people are interested in that perhaps the municipal government haven't been able to get control of. So the second faction is the Family, who are basically a mobster faction. Not massively surprising. They're leading into that kind of New York mob scene a little bit from The Godfather and the like. These guys are particularly interested in sort of device side of things. So that's the kind of aspect of life that these guys have got their fingers in and control over. And obviously they engage in mob-type tactics in order to maintain their position and to make sure that, they can try and get one up over the competition. Now, the third faction is called the Showman, and as the name implies, these are the entertainer faction, and they take the idea of entertainment and they do the conventional stuff like music and shows and things like that, and then they also ramp it up and do deadly game shows. And basically, the title of it kind of says to me like reality TV from hell. Not that that really sounds any different to any other reality TV, but so it's going to be an interesting thing, and they're leaning into that with some of the expeditions as well. So, with that one out there, this is a good time to mention the expeditions that we know about so far. So we know 2 of the 3, or a little bit about 2 of the 3 now. So the first one relates to the family, because each of these expeditions, one for each faction, is the basic setup. So the one for the family seems to have the player defending the casino against an invasion attack by the other 2 factions. The idea being that they have engaged in some shady business practices, aren't paying their dues to the other factions, basically greedy business angle that one would expect of a mobster sort of faction, and they are coming under attack as a result of this, and the player is going to help them fend off the other 2 factions. That's about all we know about that, but it sounds like that's probably going to be one of the first 2 expeditions that we will get. The second one, which sounds really, really interesting, is related to the Showman, and it's called The Most Sensational Game. It seems to be a game show from hell type of vibe. I'm getting vibes of the Gauntlet from Nuka World in Fallout 4. You have to work your way through that gauntlet to get into Nuka World on your first way into that DLC. It seems rather like it might have that kind of tone. This is sort of me reading between the lines of what they've said, to be fair, so don't quote me, but that's the vibe I'm getting. It seems to start off in a pier and be sort of set up there, and then progress down to an underwater location, an underwater kind of aquarium thing, which looks really, really cool, kind of a unique vibe. And there's sort of talk here about them running game shows with a view to people sort of changing their lives and improving their lot in the Atlantic City region, which is why sort of random people might get involved into it. And this seems to be the basis of the expedition. So it's really cool. It's definitely Bioshock vibes to this underwater area. Just a little bit, but it's there and it's quite cool. So, yeah, an interesting aesthetic. And that one ties into, as I say, the Showman. The third one will presumably tie into the municipal government. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say it probably has something to do with controlling the power and the water and making sure that it doesn't either get shut off or taken over by one of the other factions. That's me guess. They haven't said anything yet. They might say something next week, maybe, because there's another update due next week, so we'll be covering that when that rolls out. But that's my pie-in-the-sky guess at the moment, so we'll see if that's the case when the news drops. So, obviously, harking back to what I said at the start, big thing here seems to be that this might just be the story update we have been crying out for and waiting for in excess of 2 years now, but 2.5 years by the time this drops. And that's really, really cool if it's the case. They have said that in one of their updates, possibly as of the second one, from the tone of things, we'll be able to explore Atlantic City, not just in expeditions, but literally just go there, walk around, go where you want, non-directed, non-story. Well, it is story-related, but you'll be able to go do what you want and explore in a more conventional sense. Speaking of stories, we know there are quest lines related to the impact of the 3 factions. There is a quest line relating to a family that have travelled to Appalachia that is presumably going to trigger when you encounter them in Appalachia. They are apparently fleeing Atlantic City for some reason, and the player's actions will decide how this family's experience and future and stuff plays out. So there's a whole quest line there. There are apparently individual quest givers and NPCs, characters around the Atlantic City area that you can meet and help out and help them deal with their various trials and tribulations, as you'd expect from sort of random smaller quests. So it seems like there's going to be a decent batch of stuff. Sort of a larger story section, a specific focus one on this group or this family, and some other smaller quests around as well. They also talked about the threats that are coming to Atlantic City, so obviously not directly coming from within, but more like the environment around Atlantic City impacting the area itself. So on the one side, obviously, you've got the Atlantic Ocean and what might the effects of, a worldwide nuclear war have on places that are right next to the ocean. God knows what's coming out of the water there. We already know about Mirelurks, and we've seen some of those hideously mutated dolphin monstrosities. So God knows what might be coming from that direction, but there's been hints that there might be some threats coming from that direction. Also, the other side, the landward side of Atlantic City, is the Jersey Pine Barrens, I believe was what they said. That might mean more to you guys than it does to me, but woodland and countryside from the sound of it, which has apparently kind of overgrown, and with humanity being significantly less able to impact its environment, the environment is now growing back and starting to encroach on Atlantic City, and we have the impact of that, sort of bringing the threats of that side onto Atlantic City as well. There's also mention of the new cryptid, which has been data mined, so it turns out the Blue Devil is not the Jersey Devil at all, it's something else entirely, because the Jersey Devil appears to be the new cryptid that we are going to be getting more information on next week, but they have been data mined, and it looks like that'll probably be tying quite strongly into this as well, so it looks very, very interesting. And it's an interesting design as well, pretty dramatic. So, yeah, all of that stuff coming together to make the exploration of the Atlantic City location potentially really quite interesting. And a lot of people have been asking for a new explorable location for, well, years, frankly. And in particular, what we really needed was story-based content, and it looks like we're getting that, so that's very, very cool too. So it also sounds like there is one other quest as well that's attached to all of this, which is something related to a new chem called Devil's Blood, and they're debating around what this is, what its impact on people might be, what the effects of addiction are, and it sounds like there's a storyline potentially attached to this as well. I'm guessing that's maybe going to tie into the family. I've got that vibe from, obviously, they seem to be the chem-orientated faction, the chem-supplying faction, shall we say. So it'll be interesting to see how all of this ties together as well with a new chem and what effect it might have, and whether or not it's one that the player might choose to take advantage of. So that should be interesting. So other than that, basically what they're talking about is that we're going to find out a lot more on the new rewards that are coming in these updates as of next week. We should be getting a heads up on that. So they want to lean into making this rewarding to the player, apparently, which they have said about various things in the past, and mixed success in the past as well. Hopefully they'll do pretty well here, but they want to make it feel really worthwhile, so that's cool. They're also trying to make the expeditions and new area systems kind of more seamless with the player experience. So they talked about having removed the ultrasight battery charge requirement for the existing expeditions. So obviously that happened earlier this year, so you can just jump straight in. You don't need to mess around doing sort of dailies to get ready to go and do an expedition. You can just do one whenever you like. So they're kind of expanding out on that and hopefully making the whole thing flow more naturally, so that it's much easier to jump in and engage with expeditions content should you want to, without feeling like it's so much of a trial and so much of a set of hoops to jump through. So hopefully that will be quite cool as well, and the inclination to sort of move between the two areas will be quite prominent. I'm wondering whether or not we're going to see any other players in the Atlantic City area, or whether it'll be instance like, say, the pit is. Obviously, you go to do the expeditions in the pit, the only people there, the only players there for you are yourself and anybody else who's on your team. Will this be the case for Atlantic City, or is it possible that when we're walking around the boardwalk or the casino, we might see other players there? I think a lot of people would like to see it as another potential social hub where you can run into other players, not just people on your team. So who knows, maybe those external explorable areas will function like that, but they haven't said one way or the other, so it'd be interesting to find out more about that as well. Anyway, folks, I'm going to wrap this one here, as that's basically what we got out of this video that Bethesda have shared today. So link down below if you want to watch that for yourself and see what's what. It should be pretty interesting. If you did like the video, please do consider dropping subs and likes for me. I very much appreciate. Social media links, merch store, channel memberships, all those buttons down below if you want to check that out as well. I very, very much appreciate that. That support really helps out, and I hugely appreciate it. Do check out the Starfield content as well. I've been having a lot of fun with that one. We're streaming it a lot and making a good few videos on that as well. So do check out my recent apartment build on that as well. It was really quite fun. We've got a fully decorated out player home there, so have a gander at that one if you haven't caught it already. But for now, I'll say a massive thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.